I never thought a single photograph could destroy an entire family. But then again, I never thought my own family would treat me like I was invisible either. My name is Rachel Morgan, and I'm 32 years old. I live in a modest apartment in Queens, New York, where the subway rumbles beneath my window every morning at 6:15, like clockwork. I work as a freelance graphic designer, which sounds more glamorous than it is. Most days, I'm in my pajamas until noon, hunched over my laptop, trying to meet deadlines for clients who think urgent means I need this yesterday. But this story isn't about my career or my tiny apartment with the leaky faucet. This story is about the day my grandmother died, and how a single photograph turned my entire world upside down. Grandma Louise passed away on a cold February morning. The kind of morning where the wind cuts through your coat like a knife, and the sky is so gray it feels like the sun forgot to show up. I got the call from my older sister, Victoria, at 7 in the morning. Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was reading from a script. "Grandma's gone," she said. "Funeral is Saturday. Don't be late." Then she hung up. "No, how are you doing?" "No, I know this is hard. Just the facts," delivered with all the warmth of a parking ticket. That was Victoria for you. Cold, calculated, and always in control. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our family's eyes. She married a successful lawyer, lived in a mansion in Connecticut, and had 2 perfect children who probably never cried or threw tantrums. At least, that's what her Instagram made it look like. Then there was my brother Marcus. He was the middle child, the businessman, the one who turned a small tech startup into a multi-million-dollar company before he was 35. He lived in a penthouse in Manhattan, drove a Tesla, and wore suits that cost more than my rent. And then there was me, Rachel, the youngest, the disappointment, the one who chose art school over law school, who chose creativity over corporate ladders, who chose a life that made sense to me but looked like failure to everyone else. Before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching this from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this story unfolds. The funeral was held at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan. Grandma Louise had been a woman of elegance and tradition, and she'd left specific instructions for her funeral years ago. The cathedral was packed with people I barely knew, distant relatives and friends who came out of the woodwork to pay their respects. I stood in the back, wearing the only black dress I owned, a simple piece I'd bought at a thrift store 3 years ago. Victoria stood near the front in a designer dress that probably cost thousands, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Marcus stood beside her, stoic and composed, his arm around his wife, Jennifer. I felt like a ghost in my own family, invisible, forgotten. After the service, we gathered at Grandma's estate in Westchester. The house was a sprawling Victorian mansion with ivy climbing up the brick walls and a garden that looked like something out of a magazine. I'd spent summers there as a child, running through those gardens, listening to Grandma's stories about her youth, about the love she'd lost and found, about the life she'd built with Grandpa before he passed. But standing there that day, the house felt cold, empty, like all the warmth had died with her. The reading of the will took place in the library, a room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a fireplace that crackled softly in the corner. Mr. Hendricks, Grandma's lawyer, sat behind a mahogany desk, his glasses perched on the end of his nose, a thick folder in front of him. Victoria and Marcus sat in the plush leather chairs near the front. I sat in the back, on a wooden chair that creaked every time I shifted my weight. Mr. Hendricks cleared his throat. "Let's begin." Louise Morgan was very clear about her wishes. To her granddaughter Victoria, she leaves her collection of jewelry, including the diamond necklace, the pearl earrings, and the ruby ring passed down through 4 generations. Victoria's face lit up. She actually smiled. At our grandmother's funeral, I felt sick. To her grandson, Marcus, Mr. Hendricks continued, she leaves her stock portfolio, her investment accounts, and her property in the Hamptons. Marcus nodded, satisfied. Of course he was. And to her granddaughter, Rachel, I sat up straighter, my heart pounding. Maybe, just maybe, Grandma had left me something meaningful. Something that showed she valued me, even if the rest of my family didn't. Mr. Hendricks pulled out a single photograph from the folder and slid it across the desk toward me. "She leaves this photograph." That was it. A photograph. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. "A photograph? That's it?" Marcus didn't laugh, but I saw the smirk on his face, the pity in his eyes. I walked up to the desk and picked up the photograph with trembling hands. It was old, black and white, the edges yellowed with age. It showed a young woman standing in front of a small house, smiling at the camera. She was beautiful, with dark hair and kind eyes. I recognized her immediately. It was Grandma Louise. She couldn't have been more than 20 years old. "That's all?" Victoria said again, her voice dripping with condescension. "She got a picture? And we got actual valuables?" I turned the photograph over in my hands, and that's when I saw it. There was writing on the back, in Grandma's elegant cursive handwriting. "To my dearest Rachel, you were always the one who truly saw me. The truth is hidden where the roses never wilt. Find it, and you'll understand everything. I love you more than words can say. Grandma Louise." My hands shook as I read the words over and over again. "The truth is hidden where the roses never wilt." "What does it say?" Victoria demanded, standing up from her chair. I quickly shoved the photograph into my purse. "Nothing, just a note." "Let me see it," she said, reaching for my bag. I stepped back. No, for the first time in my life I stood up to Victoria, and for the first time in my life I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, uncertainty, I couldn't tell. Marcus stood up too. "Rachel, if Grandma left you something else, we have a right to know. You got jewels and property," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I got a photograph. I think we're done here." I walked out of that library with my head held high, ignoring their protests, ignoring Mr. Hendricks calling after me. I got into my beat-up Honda Civic and drove back to Queens, the photograph burning a hole in my purse. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at the photograph under the light of my desk lamp. The truth is hidden where the roses never wilt. What did that mean? I thought back to Grandma's estate, the gardens, the roses. But roses wilt, don't they? Unless I grabbed my laptop and searched for roses that never wilt. The results were mostly about artificial flowers, preserved roses, things like that. But then something caught my eye. A link to an article about a mural in Westchester, painted in the 1940s, called The Garden of Eternal Roses. My heart raced. I clicked on the link. The article talked about a mural painted on the side of an old warehouse in downtown Westchester, commissioned by a wealthy family in 1947. The mural depicted a garden full of roses, and it had become a local landmark. But what caught my attention was the name of the family who commissioned it. The Morgan family, my family. The next morning, I drove to Westchester. The warehouse was in an industrial part of town, surrounded by chain-link fences and graffiti-covered buildings. But there it was, on the side of a crumbling brick building, the mural. It was faded, the colors dulled by decades of weather and neglect, but the roses were still visible, painted in vivid reds and pinks. I stood in front of it, feeling foolish. What was I supposed to do? Dig up the ground? Knock on the wall? Then I noticed something. At the bottom of the mural, hidden among the painted roses, was a small brass plaque. I knelt down and brushed away the dirt and grime covering it. "In memory of Thomas Morgan, may his love bloom eternal." Thomas Morgan. I'd heard that name before. He was my great-grandfather, Grandma's father-in-law. He died before I was born, but Grandma had mentioned him once or twice in her stories. I ran my fingers along the edge of the plaque, and I felt it shift slightly. My heart pounded as I pried it loose. Behind it was a small hollow in the brick wall, and inside that hollow was a metal box, rusted with age. My hands shook as I pulled it out and opened it. Inside was a stack of letters, tied together with a faded ribbon, and a key. I sat on the ground, my back against the wall, and read the first letter. It was dated 1946, written in Grandma's handwriting. "My dearest Thomas, I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to send these letters, but I need to write them. I need you to know the truth about us, the truth about the child." I stopped breathing. The child. I read letter after letter, each one revealing a story I never knew. Grandma Louise had been in love with Thomas Morgan before she married my grandfather. They'd had an affair, a secret romance that no one knew about, and she'd gotten pregnant. But Thomas was already married to a woman from a powerful family, a family that would have destroyed Grandma's reputation, her future, everything. So she made a choice. She gave the baby up for adoption and married my grandfather, a kind man who never knew the truth. She buried her secret, lived with it for decades, carried the weight of it, until the day she died. The last letter was dated just 6 months ago. I found her. After all these years, I found my daughter. Her name is Margaret, and she lives in Boston. She has children of her own, grandchildren, a whole life I was never a part of. I wanted to tell her the truth, to explain, but I was too afraid, too ashamed. So I'm leaving her something in my will, something that will give her the answers she deserves. I just hope she can forgive me. I stared at the letter, tears streaming down my face. Grandma had another daughter. I had an aunt I never knew existed. And then it hit me. The key. I looked at it, small and brass, with an engraving on it. First National Bank, Westchester. I drove to the bank, my mind racing. I showed the key to the clerk, who led me to a row of safe deposit boxes in the back. The key fit perfectly into box number 247. Inside was a folder, a birth certificate, adoption papers, and a letter addressed to Margaret. But there was something else. A second folder. This one was addressed to me. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a notarized document, a deed to a property in upstate New York, a cabin by a lake, and a letter. My dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, it means you found the truth. You were always the curious one, the one who asked questions, the one who saw beyond the surface. That's why I left you the photograph. I knew you'd understand. I knew you'd find this. The cabin is yours. It's been in our family for generations, but no one knows about it except me. I bought it back years ago, in secret, because it was the one place I felt truly free, the one place where I could be myself. Your brother and sister got jewels and money because that's what they value. But you, my dear Rachel, you value truth. You value stories. You value the things that money can't buy. Inside the cabin, you'll find everything. My journals, my paintings, my memories, the life I lived in secret, the life I couldn't share with anyone else. And you'll find the contact information for Margaret. She doesn't know about me yet. I'm leaving that choice to you. Tell her the truth if you think she deserves to know, or keep it buried like I did for so long. I love you, Rachel. Never forget that. Grandma Louise. I sat in the bank parking lot sobbing, not because of the cabin or the property, but because Grandma had seen me, really seen me. She'd known that I didn't need jewels or money. I needed to know that I mattered, that I was valued. I drove to the cabin that weekend. It was a 2-hour drive north of the city, nestled in the woods by a pristine lake. The cabin was small but beautiful, with large windows overlooking the water and a wraparound porch. Inside, I found everything Grandma had promised. Journals filled with her thoughts, her fears, her dreams. Paintings she'd created in secret, hidden away from the world. And photographs. So many photographs. There was one of her holding a baby, tears streaming down her face. My aunt, the daughter she'd given up. I found Margaret's contact information in one of the journals, a phone number, an address in Boston. I called her the next day. My heart pounded as the phone rang. Hello? A woman's voice, warm and kind. Hi, I said, my voice shaking. My name is Rachel Morgan. I think we might be related. There was a long pause. Then, I've been waiting for this call my whole life. We talked for hours. She told me about her life, her adoptive parents, her search for her birth mother. She told me how she'd hit dead ends, how she'd almost given up. I told her about Grandma Louise, about the letters, the cabin, the truth. She cried. I cried. And then she said, "Can I meet you?" A week later, Margaret came to the cabin. She was in her 60s, with gray hair and Grandma's kind eyes. We sat on the porch, looking out at the lake, and I showed her the letters, the photographs, everything. She loved you, I said. She thought about you every day. Margaret nodded, tears in her eyes. I wish I could have met her. I wish I could have told her it's okay, that I forgive her. I think she knows, I said. As for Victoria and Marcus, I didn't tell them about the cabin or Margaret. They got their jewels and their money, and they were happy. They didn't need to know the truth. They didn't care about the things that really mattered. But I learned something from Grandma's photograph. I learned that the most valuable things in life aren't things you can hold in your hands. They're the stories, the truths, the connections we make with each other. Grandma Louise gave me more than a photograph. She gave me a piece of herself. And that's worth more than all the jewels in the world. I still have the photograph. It sits on my desk in the cabin, where I now spend my weekends writing and painting, just like Grandma did. And every time I look at it, I hear her voice in my head, reminding me that I was seen, I was valued, and I was loved. That's all any of us really want, isn't it? To be seen, to matter. Grandma made sure I knew that I did.